hello, everybody, and welcome to our continuing coverage of the second annual Dogman and Cryptid conference here in White Settlement, Texas. We are here right now with Adam Davies. How you doing, bud?
I'm good, Chris. It's been good to see you again.
You too, man. I love following you on social media. You are always out in the field doing all kinds of stuff. How have the investigations been going for you?
They've been fascinating. What I've been trying to do recently, because I'm living in Tennessee right now, I was outdoors doing things, as you know, every week for days and days, trying to learn the local flora and fauna. And then I started to do investigations into things in the area that particularly interested me as I'm here. And some of those were the anecdotal stories and accounts of feral humans and whether they existed, and also investigating some of the big mysteries there.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you bring up the feral humans, because I was just talking earlier, and I've been on a tear lately of sharing crypto things with people, and I don't know that I shared it with you, but there was just a sighting of basically a feral human in Germany. In the Hirsch Mountains.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Of a wolf man.
I did not know
that. Yeah. It was literally recently. I will bring it up right now as we're talking and show it to you and show it to the camera, because it's phenomenal to know that there have been stories about things just put in wolf, and it's the first thing that popped up.
Okay, I'll have a look through it.
So, yeah, out of dailymail.uk, folks, mysterious naked, quote, wolf man spotted in Germany's Harz Mountains. Hikers take photo of man naked holding a wooden spear near a ruined castle.
Well, that's it. Yeah, they're often naked, and they could at least have the decency to wear pants when you're trying to do your show live conference. Wolfman.
Well, let's get into some of these sightings, because one of the things that I've talked about with people before is Cherokee Little People.
Yes.
That is one of the many stories over there. The Hobbit-like folks that live in the woods.
And you've got the moon-eyed people as well, and there's traditions about them.
Yeah.
So I've always interested, as you know, in the cultural anthropology behind these things. And many people would say, objectively, well, okay, I'm suspicious of the idea of Bigfoot. And I understand that.
Sure.
But many people would not say, well, I'm suspicious of the idea that people could go feral and live in that environment. Tennessee, let me tell you, the ecosystem, certainly in the Smokies, is a pretty easy system to survive in.
Oh, yeah.
Compared to a lot of other places. The winters are really mild. There's pretty much always something to eat. The bears, where there are so many bears there, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the bears really don't hibernate very often.
Yeah, there's not a hard hibernation like they go through in the Northeast.
It's very soft.
Yeah.
So it's a very easy place to live, and there are many thousands of acres of forest. So if you were so minded, or if you had some sort of mental illness that caused you to go there, it would be very easy to become feral there. And there are also plentiful cave systems in the area under the Smokies. So, let's extrapolate that. So what you say is, you have stories about Bigfoot, you have stories about disappearance cases. What if there were feral people who were causing some of these stories, who could adapt to that environment and live there? One thing I think there's an important point to also add is, if these people did things like that, it wouldn't be in large groups. I think it would be isolated pockets, and they would have to have a lot of cultural regression. So what do I mean by cultural regression? They would have to have no fires. No fires. Why do I say that? Because fires act as a beacon of attraction. Yeah?
Sure.
It's slightly different, but say when I was in Mongolia, I worked out, I was in a very remote part of Mongolia. Mongolia is the size of Western Europe, but it only had a few million people living there, like 3 million.
Yeah.
And there was one time when I was me and my driver and my translator, and I worked out that the nearest person was probably 50 miles away.
Wow.
At that point, it was super remote. Just sat there around a little fire, having a couple of vodkas, because that's what you do in Mongolia. I know I don't need an excuse, but I'm just telling you. But if in that circumstance I had seen a fire, and it was maybe 5 or 10 miles away, I would have gone to it. All right?
Absolutely.
With the same, you think about the smoke, as if you suddenly start seeing fires in the forest.
It's
a signal.
Absolutely.
And people would go to it. Not necessarily hikers, but also the parks. It would be like, what's that smoke? So they would have to have no fire as a starting point. They would have to be very isolated. But there's something strange in the park. You know, there's been a few occasions which I've been looking at recently, not just the Dennis Martin case. I went to Spence Field.
Oh, wow.
The famous Dennis Martin case. You can see it on my Adam Davies public Facebook page. I went there. I've been there twice in the last month or so. But also there's a couple of others where people have disappeared. There's one guy, I'll post it next week. He's like, in 1991, he was balanced. He lives on the edge of the park. He has a 100-acre farm. He's successful. His car is found. His car is in gear. All his personal possessions are in it. Yeah? And then his ATV is found. Then he's not found. There's a search. It's just as large as the Dennis Martin thing.
Yeah.
They use cadaver dogs. Nothing. His son suspect foul play. Where is he? He's disappeared.
Yeah.
And I went there as well very recently. So, I mean, you know, what I've been doing is investigating whether there's a plausibility to the feral human cases. Is it if it is it just rogue individuals, or is there a group?
Yeah.
And how does that tie in with, say, potential Bigfoot activity? Is it something distinct, or is it something different? And that's what I'm working on.
Sure. Well, and I mean, even the idea is there a breeding population of feral humans and a society that is living outside of society? You know?
And I think it would be very hard for that to happen, I have to say. If and they would have to be very transient, small, and it would have to be
small family group.
Yeah, it would be a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But it would not be impossible to do.
Well, sure. I mean, one of the things that we do regularly whenever we talk Bigfoot cryptids is show the picture of the United States from the ISS at night. There is a lot of black. There's a lot of black, not a lot of light when it comes to nighttime. So and especially in Tennessee, there is a lot of back hill. There's a lot of back country.
There are many thousands of acres. And of course, people understandably stick to the trails, yeah? You and I can easily be...
Oh, it's what we're taught to do.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Unless you're an experienced woodsman, that's what you're taught to do.
And that's quite right. But, you know, we could be literally 3 or 4 feet away from where we are now in the trail, and we'd never be seen by people.
Absolutely.
Never. I mean, so even when you say there are trails and these are where people go, the reality of the situation is it's very easy to slip off into the forest.
Sure, absolutely. I was talking with King Gerhardt yesterday about the fact of disappearances in Alaska, things like that. Is it the fact of they actually disappeared, or that they wanted to disappear?
Well, it can be both.
It's a great place to just go and vanish.
It's fast. I mean, I've been to Alaska a couple of times. I went to Port Chatham, as you know, before they made the TV series and all that lot. And it's funny, the creatures will behave differently there because they're not used to people.
Yeah.
So before the TV series, for the first time I went to Port Chatham, there were a lot of otters. And the otters had never seen, some of the otters had never seen people before. Because I pitched the camp, there was me and Stephen, Major, and a cameraman, Josh. And, Stephen had financed it, so credit to him. But the initial excursion was a few days, and I wanted to see what it was. So I wanted to position my team opposite the Port Chatham itself, so I could observe, but also on a spit of land. So if anything weird did come along, it was defendable. And we had 2 watches, so there was always 2 people awake at any one time. But the interesting thing about how creatures behave in that situation is the baby otters were being held up by the parents to see the humans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which was very cool.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, otters specifically, were they curious or afraid?
Super curious. I mean, they'd come towards the beach, and like at night it'd be like the otter show, and the otters were watching us and we were watching them. Yeah. Not all the time, but it was like quite cool to see them behaving like
your
that.
own nature show right there in front of you.
Yeah.
And it is remarkable, especially when you're talking about being out in the woods, stuff like that. Like you could be unless you're a trained hunter, things like that. You could be 10 feet away from a deer and never know it. Never know it.
No, you could. I mean, and animals will behave very differently when they've had contact with humans. I think that's the point. I talked yesterday about how a clouded leopard had come into my camp in Nepal because it was curious and it was, doing that. And it just walked in, and while me and Ian Redmond, the UN ambassador for gorillas, we just sat there having a whiskey, and there's the clouded leopard. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think you have this behaviour of animals which is very different in remote areas as opposed to areas where you see a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was an interesting case out of, and I want to say it was Tennessee, a few years ago, of an 8-year-old girl that went missing for 9 days, ended up popping back up and saying she was cared for by a bear in a cave. That she was taken by a bear. Like, to me, kid from the 80s, I just thought of Maggie Simpson in The Bear, like, teaching all the bears and stuff like that, like being in charge of them all. That's what popped into my head first. But yeah, it was one of those. Well, an 8-year-old kid would definitely identify that as a bear, unless this is one of your parents and they're into cryptids, things like that. Like, you may not have heard of Bigfoot as an 8-year-old.
No, it's totally. I mean, in reality, a bear,
or even a feral human. Or even a feral human, especially if you're talking like what we just showed, where covered head to toe in hair.
Well, they
like
wear
that.
furs because they have to wear some sort.
You got to wear something to keep
they'd
warm.
Wear furs and they'd behave, slightly differently. But it obviously wasn't a bear. If it was a bear, it would have eaten her.
Yeah. That is a meal.
Absolutely to bears. So what took her? Yeah, what took her?
What not just took her, took care of her.
Well, that's the important thing.
That's the important thing, is that it cared for her.
It cared for her, which is a human.
It fed her. It kept her warm.
Human thing.
Because there's no way 9 days. You're out in the field. You're going to places like Nepal. You're going out looking for Yeti, things like that, with zero supplies. What are your chances as a grown man of 9 days?
It would be very tough.
It would be
very
hard.
Tough.
It would be hard. And you know how to make fire. You know how to purify water. You know how to find food to eat.
Well, the food.
An 8-year-old doesn't know all those things.
She would have been dead of dehydration.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, precisely. So it's one of those, like you said, not a bear. Something took care of her and make sure that she had those things that you need to survive.
Yeah.
So even to think of not Bigfoot, but feral human,
Yeah, and I think that those sort of things are particularly interesting in Tennessee. I think Tennessee is perfectly adapted for that. As you know, the forests of Michigan would be very cold and hard for people to do. I mean, it's doable, but there's no better place I've ever been than Tennessee for that. If you want to have a feral human population, then that's the perfect place.
Well, and many people living in the back hills, stuff like that still, in the foothills of the Appalachians, stuff like that. So the idea of somebody living fully off grid, occupying caves, things like that, not crazy to think about.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, it's difficult. I'm not saying that I'm not trying to advocate that that's what happened, because at the moment I'd say it's more unlikely than not that it's feral people. But I'm not going to investigate something that's wildly implausible. If there's a narrative to it, and I think that it's supportable, then I'll look into it. And that's what I've been doing there. Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm glad to hear that, because it's an interesting point of research that I don't think anybody has really taken on. And
not for a while. They've researched stories, but they've not done a lot of the physical investigation.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to do that, and I'll do that for a little bit longer. And then we'll see what I turn my mind to next. I'm never quite sure. I've been doing a lot of. I've also been doing. It's not connected with cryptids, but I've been doing a little bit of paranormal stuff recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool. How have you been liking that?
I enjoyed it. It was different. Now, I've always had an interest in it, but I've never really pursued it that much. But
cool.
Recently, I have.
Okay.
And I'll tell you one story, actually.
Please.
I've not told anyone else. So Chris is my friend, so I'm going to tell him a story. I'm going to give him an exclusive.
Thank you.
And this happened by accident, not by. I mean, there's a few things which I've investigated, which I found have happened because of my investigation. But this is. I'm not going to take credit for this. This is it. So I went to West Virginia and spent some time there, and for part of the time, I stayed in a house. And I just got a very weird vibe about this house. Very, very strange. You know when you go in somewhere and you feel like, it's almost like a repressed feeling, and there was a particular room in this house where I went into where I had like butterflies in my stomach for one about. I felt very uncomfortable. Just felt it. And I thought, just don't feel great about this. And I was staying there with another person, and they had a dog with them, so there's 3 of us in the house. And it was one of those Airbnbs, yeah?
Okay.
So it's in a fairly remote area, but not very remote, but that's it. So when the days when I was staying there, lock up the house, go out. But this room was weird, and I noticed the dog kept looking in a corner of the room when we went in, and I'm like, and then at night, I felt like, you know, if I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I feel like, oh, shit, I feel like something's watching me.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, what have I got to lose? It's not really what I was there for. I was doing Bigfoot research, yeah? I thought, I'm going to stick up a trail camera just in this room and see what happens. So I locked the door of this bedroom. I stick up a trail camera. The door's locked, remember. Stick up a trail camera. And left it, pulled it up, went back home, and there's a face in the trail camera photograph of a guy, and you can see part of his face. And there's a guy, and he looks like he's wearing some sort of military uniform. Okay.
Wow.
So I got the. So there's 2 explanations for this. And both of them are creepy. Number 1, it's some sort of spirit.
Yeah.
And it's taken it, because I said to it, I said, if you want to show yourself on this trail camera. This is what a trail camera is. Show yourself on it if you want to do that. That's what I did as a detail. Or it's somebody who broke into the house, saw that there was a trail camera in the house, and it was only that night I set it up.
Yeah.
So I hadn't left it. They would have had to have broken into the house, got past me, got past another bedroom, got past the dog,
past the locked door.
Got past the locked door, and the dog's a pit bull, by the way. Yeah. It's not like little.
Yeah.
You know, and got into that room, specifically taking the photograph, stole nothing, and then left and did the same process back.
One or two.
So it's one of the. So it's either that or it's a spirit. Now, if you're very skeptical and you don't like those things to say, well, it's just a weirdo. Somehow he knew that was your objective, and he broke in and did that. But that becomes increasingly implausible. Or it's some sort of spirit. So what happens? So I got my friend to contact the owner of the Airbnb, and she felt that it may well be her relative who was 19 years old, who died in Vietnam. She said, well, this was the place where me and him used to like to play. This was a childhood memory. And I just thought that's a fascinating story. And that's the first
awesome.
time I've talked about it, yeah?
Wow, what an incredible experience,
man.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Very
interesting.
That is wild. That is wild. And how has that changed you in any way? Is that...
No, there's a couple of... I mean, it would take a long time to explain, but there's a couple of strange paranormal experiences I've had over the last year or so that got me into that. There was something in Michigan before that really got me into it. But I thought it was fascinating. I think the photograph's interesting.
Yeah.
And I can accept that some people may well say, well, that's just a weirdo breaking in. But why? And then why would he not steal anything? And how would he know about my experiment? And why would he do that and lock the door after? You know, it's just...
it's a chain of implausibility.
It's a chain of implausibility, which lead me to think it could be something. And I'll put that up at some stage, I'm sure, the photograph. I've thought about it for a while, and I've thought about it, and I thought, do I want that level of attention right now? And I was busy doing a lot of things in Tennessee, and I thought, no, I don't want that yet, because I think if I put it up, it's going to just blow up. You know?
Yeah, it's a big one to think about.
Yeah, it's a big one. Do I want it on that one? Because I've always prioritized my field work for looking for new species and trying to get scientific evidence of those.
Yeah.
The paranormal thing has been something that it's intrigued me because it's been fun, but it's happened. There's been a few hits I've had.
Yeah.
That was by accident, but there's been... Well, I suppose it wasn't in some ways. I set trail camera up. You know what I
Sure,
mean? So
sure.
I did think of that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't planned to get that photograph. But there's been a few things that, have interested me in the paranormal field where I thought, well, I will investigate this.
Yeah.
I don't know. You see, what I've always felt is that, with science, I want science to evaluate evidence, and I'm never going to change on that point. But then also I thought, well, my understanding, I've always been intellectually curious, Chris, as you know.
Yeah.
I'm not, doing TV shows was never a plan of mine. It was a byproduct of the things
of your curiosity.
My curiosity
your
just
research.
happened. And my research, and ultimately that's what drives me. I'm interested in answers and exploring necessarily nature, but also we can explore our own understandings on our own consciousness and persona outside that.
It was really great during the NASA UFO UAP panel that happened about a month or so ago to hear the scientists themselves say that they have woefully been disregarding their responsibility as scientists by simply continuing to confirm known quantitative instead of investigating the 3 to 5% anomaly that's actively there.
Well, that's the interesting thing. I mean, it's no good reaffirming what you already know. You have to explore the boundaries, and you have to suspend your ego and say, well, actually, I could be wrong. And actually, being wrong sometimes is a good thing.
It's a great thing.
It's a good thing because you're making progress.
Well, confirming what isn't gets you closer to confirming what is.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, whenever I go to a targeted individual's house, I don't break out my RF equipment first and start scanning for signals.
No.
I go with known quantitative first. Let's pull out my radon detector.
Yeah.
Let's see if maybe you have a radon leak in your house somewhere. Let's pull out my gas meter, see if maybe you're living on a fault line. You could have some sort of natural gas leak in your house that you're not aware of that could be causing these phenomenon. All kinds of stuff. We will get rid of the known quantitative and then leave anomalous, and now we'll start looking at that.
Yeah.
But let's get rid of the known quantitative first.
Exactly. I mean, and you always have to be aware, and I think in any of these circumstances, there's the adage which extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with investigating those sort of things is very difficult to quantify the data and analyse it objectively to get that proof. But it's still a real damn good adventure, and
that's
great.
just it. That's the beautiful thing about real science, Adam, is that it is Magellan. It is that idea of, well, okay, maybe the horizon ends there. Who wants to hop on the ship with me and find out?
Yeah.
Because it took one crazy dude to be like, maybe it doesn't end there. Let's sail to it. And let's keep going.
Let's do it.
And let's keep going. And we need more of that almost reckless abandon in science where you're really willing to put aside everything that you know.
It's very
and explore it from a ground zero point of view.
Yeah, and it's very safe to reaffirm what's already been known, and you can have a good career doing that. But
it's how textbooks are written. It's how curricula come about.
Yeah, but ultimately, I don't think if you have intellectual curiosity, you're never gonna quench that thirst by reading a textbook.
Yeah.
You need to read the textbook in order to do the initial groundwork, but after that, keep going back and looking at the same text.
No. At some point, it comes down to that point of real science, hypothesis. And so many times we forget about the fact that it starts with hypothesis. And you're allowed to hypothesize anything.
Yeah, and you should.
And you should.
That's how you build ideas.
Exactly. And through the testing of that hypothesis, we'll prove whether or not there's a founding of a theorem there, And then from there, further proof will lead to fact of nature or law of science, what have you. But it starts with that imagination point of hypothesis. And the root of that is thesis and hypo. Hypo being huge.
Yeah.
Huge. It's the point of expanding that. And how far are you willing to expand that thesis? Because the further you expand the thesis, the more possibilities there are.
Exactly. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we have to be willing to do that. We have to be willing to do that even as skeptics.
Yeah.
You know, like a skeptic is a really, really dirty word in this industry, and that's kind of sad.
Well, it shouldn't be. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I think it's good for you to have people to challenge your actions and opinions.
Well, sure.
It's providing it's respectful and not.
Well, and my job as a skeptic isn't to punch holes in your stuff or anything like that. It's to be ready to have my mind changed and to change my set of data from the points of datum you provide.
Exactly.
That's my job.
But I also think as well, it's important for you to read and understand other people's ideas which you might not necessarily agree with.
That's right.
It's very important to do that.
It's like being in debate.
In all
it's
walks
like being
of life.
in debate.
Absolutely.
You got to be able to see the other person's point of view
in order to understand it. Absolutely.
Exactly.
It's very important. And I always encouraged my students when I was teaching, and also when I was younger, I was always like, okay, well, this person's views are very diametrically opposed to mine. I should read them, not just dismiss them.
That's right.
And that I would encourage anybody who listens to your show to do that. Yeah, try and find people who have a polar opinion,
Absolutely,
opposite opinion to yours, and don't just look at reaffirmation.
It is one of the things I have preached on my show for the longest since we were Dudes and Beer. If you're going to read news, I don't care if it's science news, what have you, read a couple of opinions you agree with. Read 2 that you vehemently disagree with. Read 3 from outside the U.S.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Because now you're getting even outside of your cultural point of view.
And one of the points I've just thought about tangentially, because this is, again, I think this is important, is our Googles and the problem with algorithms is algorithms.
It curates to you and your taste.
It's reaffirming our biases. So your Google and my Google, even if we have broadly similar opinions, and I think we do, but it's going to look different.
Yep.
My Google, you know, there's a young lady over there, Melissa. Hers would be totally different to mine because she's a woman. She's a different age group. Yeah, she probably has different opinions.
Her
to me.
searches come up differently. The way she searches are
the
different.
idea that we're using unbiased tech.
Yes.
In order to look for information, it's not like a library.
Bring it in.
It's not like a library.
It's not a library.
It's not. It's reaffirming our own biases, and people don't realize that. They need to.
And one of the things I bring up all the time, Adam, is the fact of, I am old enough to remember riding a bicycle to the library, looking things up on microfiche. Maybe the library didn't even have it, so I had to order it from the downtown library or go there to get it. We are now at a point where that library is in our hands, where our brains were made to be a sieve to filter information from a faucet, a trickle, a hand pump. You know?
Yeah.
We now have a torrential downpour of data that the gutter is overflowing, and there's so much that the colander cannot sift it. It's overflowing the sides.
Yeah.
And people trying to be able to sift and sort that information, it takes time to absorb. Not everybody can absorb, process, and spit out information that fast. Not everybody's brains can process things that quickly. It takes an absorptive process for you to bring it in, absorb it, see how it reacts to your life, your range of looking at things. We are bombarded with so much information so fast that the filter's clogged. The filter's clogged.
Absolutely. But all the time as well. All the time.
And then you've got the bias to deal with at that same moment.
All the time that bias is trying to work out what it should show you.
Yep.
Yeah, not on a sentient level. Eventually, that'll be coming in. But what should it show you? What should it show you to make itself more efficient? So it provides for your needs better. So I can put more advertisements in it.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's a worry. I think it's a worry now that everything is being tailored. You know, if you're a young person now, if you're like 14,
studies
15,
are being tailored, man.
Tailored.
Study results are being tailored.
But it's and you've got the chat. But everything is now confirmation bias, and you think it's an illusion to think, oh yes, I have access to all the information. I just have to Google everything. That's an illusion.
Yeah.
You do not, because you are constantly confirmation biasing
if
your
you're
information.
doing that, you need to dig down into page 7 or 8.
Yes.
You need to dig
you need
way
to go
down into Google and get to things that would not be within that bias of what you're searching, because they're there, but
the top ones are always what you would see.
You ain't making it past. You're typically not scrolling down the first whole page of search results to begin with before you start clicking things.
Yeah.
So, most of that in that top Google search range is going to be what you typically look up.
Yeah. It's what I want.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not how the library used to work.
It's the Brondo. It's what plants crave.
Yes.
It's what plants crave.
Well, that's it. Well, the library, the last thing we'll talk about in the library, because this is a good discussion. I haven't had this discussion with anyone before. The library, you could wander down those aisles and you could see. It was all visual.
Yeah.
You could see.
Yeah.
I could pick out this book, that book.
And you could take your time.
I could take my time.
You could peruse a book.
There's a philosophy I really struggle with. It's abhorrent to me. I'm going to read it, There it is. But the tech won't give you that. You have to really search.
You do, and that's just it.
And many people can't be bothered with that.
And that's just it. And that becomes an endemic part of the problem as well, is that you can't be bothered to search deeper. You don't have time to search deeper.
No time. I've got 20 minutes. I need it now. Give me this information now.
Exactly.
Now,
and research papers do not happen now.
Oh.
Proper research doesn't happen now. That is curated over a long period of time, and that's just it. Even field research, it's one of those that is curated over a long period of time. To even right now, for you to say you had any kind of answer regarding your field research into wild men living in the Tennessee Hills.
Might be never. Might be ages.
Who knows? But it's the continuous search for data and the continuing culling of data. And the one thing I have been saying about AI is that I can't wait till MUFON turns AI loose on 50 years of MUFON cases. The patterns that it's going to find that we haven't even thought about are going to be massive. And it's going to be the same thing. They're talking about using AI for wildlife call identification in Sasquatch hunting, things like that, to be able to rapidly put a call against a database of things to see if it lies within a known range quantitative of animals in the area. Beautiful things like that for this kind and field of research that these new technologies are going to bring to us. It's great.
There's some wonderful positives. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's interesting within our lifetime to see the progress.
Yeah.
So, when I first started to do expeditions, and if I was doing, let's just take Sumatra as an example, because this is a good example.
Sure.
So when I first started to do expeditions to Sumatra, I used to write a letter to my guides, and maybe it would get there, maybe it wouldn't, and maybe I'd get a reply in a few months. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, computers started to come in. And so maybe when they got to an email place, they'd send an email. Maybe they wouldn't. And there was one woman who had a phone in the village. And I'd phone up. And I'd say I wanted to speak to Sahara, who was my chief guide then.
Hold on, let me go a few doors down and get him.
Well, I'd call back in an hour. Because I knew he'd be waiting an hour.
Yeah,
the 1 hour time block was easy to do for them. So I'd say I want out. Then a few years later, I come out of the jungle one time. I'm exhausted and my clothes are ripped. Blah blah blah. We stagger we were all wet through. We stagger towards Sahara's village, which is on the edge of the jungle. And we go in, and there's one TV in the village. He has it, and SpongeBob SquarePants is playing. Like this. And I'm like, sheesh, this is so surreal.
This is weird.
SpongeBob, this is weird. And now, his kids are Facebooking live from the edge of the very jungle, which was considered semi-impenetrable.
Thanks to Starlink.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we're here, and behind me is Bobby the Gibbon, and it's and the Gibbon's
the village Gibbon.
And it's that transition,
Yeah.
that rapidity. If you were a medieval peasant, you'd see nothing for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
There'd be no technological leaps. In my lifetime, I've visibly seen exponential leaps, which our ancestors would have considered implausible, even if they understood the tech.
Even the logistics of putting together an expedition, like you were saying, the idea of you would write a letter. Maybe a month or so later, you'd get a letter back. Like the rapidity of being able to assemble an expedition now, of being able to go online, apply for your visa to the country, Not fill out a form, send
it's
it to an
everything.
embassy, and wait for an embassy to reply. Like, it's almost immediate.
If I wanted to do something like that in that particular area, Nina, I have it all wrapped up in a week, easy.
Yeah.
All wrapped up. I mean, you know, where and it's amazing now how, I mean, people are very. But the other thing I'd say is, you know, people are very connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was teaching, so I look at my cell phone here. We're in a way we're almost cybernetic, because, you know, if I asked any of these people at this conference today and we talked about phones and stuff, a lot of them would be, I understand, would be very upset if they didn't have their phone for even an hour.
Oh, yeah.
For a day, they'd be devastated.
Yeah.
And that's that. So people might think they're independent of technology, but really they're not.
No,
you know, they're
no.
not. Even not just on a functional
Good
level.
Lord, look at what happened to us when we had no toilet paper for a week.
Oh my gosh,
Adam.
Yeah.
A week.
But phones, I would say phones would be worse.
Yeah.
Phones would be worse.
If you had no internet, if the internet went down for a week,
no internet, you know, and people rely on that.
it would be madness. It would be
They'd be like,
good
how
Lord,
can
we
I
turn cars over and burn towns because the team won.
Well,
Imagine if that happened.
Well, you are. I mean,
Madness.
People say, "Oh, you know, I'm independent." Oh, what about all this? You know, you talk about cybernetic technology coming in.
Yeah,
we're already cybernetic. It's just not. It's not molded to your body in the same way.
You're already fully connected.
You're fully connected,
and your endorphin system is already fully connected.
Well, that's my next point. It's a Borg thing almost for those people who are in Star Trek. You're already a kind of Borg.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was teaching a Japanese kid one time, and I was using a cell phone as an example. And I remember I asked him if I could use his cell phone for an example, because mine was on the desk and I was on the other side of the classroom. And he said, yeah. And then I noticed while I was talking about the various terminology connected with the phone, he got very nervous and stressed. And I saw his hand actually. I gave him his phone back. I saw his hand. He started to drink water. And I had the phone in my hand for 5 or 6 minutes. But he was so connected with his phone.
Yeah.
The thought of me having his phone freaked him out. I gave it him back as soon as I saw that. But it was like worrying.
Yeah, no.
It was worrying. But, you know, if you said to people, and it's not just young people, if you said to people, you know, you don't have your phone for 4 days, well, how do you do? What do you think? They'd be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And it caused relationship problems. If you don't phone your wife on the internet or whatever, you'd be in a lot of
I'll
trouble.
give you a soft experiment, folks. For a long time, Adam, I practiced Black Sabbath. So the idea of no technology on whatever you want to call your Sabbath day. You want to call it Wednesday because that's your day off work? Great.
Yeah.
No television, no phone, no internet. Go fishing. Go do some gardening. Go do something. Go play guitar in a dark room. Whatever. But return back to a point pre-electricity for a day. Unplug for a day. Get away from it all, and see how you feel. Like just as a personal experience. Like give it 4 weeks. Give it 1 month of 1 day a week.
1 day a week, and
put your phone in a drawer.
You can do that. You're not asking to cut yourself off from society.
No. We used to be that way.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, where we weren't inundated with this, where we had do you remember when you remembered 50 phone numbers?
Yeah, you had
50 10-digit phone numbers? Now I know.
I struggle to remember my own.
I know one that can take a collect call just in case I get arrested. I remember one phone number that will be able to accept a collect call. I don't have a Rolodex in my head anymore. It's on my phone.
Yeah.
You know?
Everything.
And we have sacrificed a lot to that. We've sacrificed evidentiary process to that. We have sacrificed our want of confirmation to that. So many things we have put into that box and put into that kitty. So, like we have to be ready as people, even as a field researcher, a citizen scientist, we have to be willing to put those things aside and look at the bigger picture, look at things from outside of our lens. you know?
Definitely.
So, yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, this has been Chris and Adam's philosophy
That's right.
lecture for the day.
Welcome. Well, you know, when the show started, the idea was, like I was telling you earlier, it was a deep conversation about humanity and people and where we were going. And this has all roiled to the top of the pot. All paranormal, UFO, UAP, cryptid, like all of this stuff is roiling to the top of the pot right now in our society. And it's interesting to see this return to spiritualism, like this true centennial point of view. Like when you look back at the 1920s, that's what we were going through. You know, when you look back to the beginning of the 1900s, it was the beginning of the spiritualist movement. It was all of these things, paranormal, ghosts, all of that stuff was right at the top of the roiling pot, and we're right there again. So the difference is we have a realm of technology now.
Yes.
We're no longer following humors in our body. We know about medicine. We know about all these things.
Yes.
But yet still, that spirituality and that spiritualism is coming to the top despite the science.
Well, I think
and
we
it's
have
awesome.
and I agree.
It's
I think
awesome.
we have an intrinsic need for it.
Yeah,
As
we
human
do.
beings, we have an intrinsic need for something spiritual.
Oh, absolutely.
To be divorced from that is to be hollow.
Yeah.
I remember there was a great one of the great skeptics and atheists I knew. He died, but as he was dying, he knew he was dying, and he wanted a moment. He wanted a moment, a revelatory moment at the end, as he died, which would be some sort of cognizant download of information or spiritual
yeah, the
moment.
Akashic records get released.
Yeah, he had something that he wanted. He wasn't quite sure what it would be, but he wanted a moment of knowledge or a moment of spirituality, even at his death, even though he denied the existence of God.
Sure.
That's what he wanted.
You don't have to believe in God to have a spiritual moment.
No.
It's the beautiful thing.
And I think I think that's always going to be a fundamental need in human nature.
Yeah. One last question, Adam. What do you want before you go?
And I think that's a good question. I hope I'm never out to evangelize people.
Yeah.
I hope people enjoy my books. I hope they enjoy the expedition books and the fiction books, because I've enjoyed writing those after I got long COVID.
Sure.
And I started to recover from that. So I hope that people enjoy those. That's what I'd like. On a personal level as well, I'd like to see a Bigfoot type creature. I would love to do that. I've seen.
That's what I love.
I
is
love
that
it.
Sans experience, you still research this stuff.
I would love
you have not seen a Bigfoot.
No, I've never seen one.
You know,
I'd like to see one. I've seen other things, that are strange things, but very rarely and over decades. It's not like things pop out all the time.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing I've wanted to see since I was a kid. So I'd like that ambition to be realized one day. So very simply, that would be good for me. I'd be happy.
Yeah. All right. Well, and there you have it. Adam, thanks so much for taking the time. I know you've been over there working your table hard.
Yeah.
Thanks for pulling away and coming over here and having this truly, truly deep and personal conversation.
No, I've enjoyed it, Chris.
It's-
Chris is a super nice guy. I'll say this. He doesn't know I'm going to say this, but he's very caring and intellectual, and I like having this. I wanted to have this conversation with him because he's a good man and he's doing good stuff with his work.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that, Adam. Let everybody know where they can go to keep up with your work, where they can go to buy your books, follow you on social media, and all your research.
Well, the easiest place is Adam Davies, Facebook, Davies. They can see me there, AdamDavisExplorer.com, the website. And, my books are on Amazon too.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the time, bud. I appreciate it.
All right, my
While
pleasure.
you're online checking out all of Adam's work, make sure to stop on by CuriousRealm.com. That's where you can find all the episodes. That's where you can like, follow, subscribe. That's where you can fill out our experiencer form at CuriousRealm.com/story. Share your experience of the paranormal, cryptids, or UFOs, UAPs. You can share your evidence with us as well, your pictures, videos, audio. We will present it to our researchers and professionals and try to find some answers for you. Stay tuned through these commercial breaks. We'll be right back with our final bit of coverage from day 2 of the second annual Dogman and Cryptid Festival right here in White Settlement, Texas, brought to you by the Paranormal Round Table. We'll be right back after this.